A lot of the work at the moment, while it's not necessarily just about emissions and climate change, it's closely linked into it. So a really good example is some of the work that we do with our residential colleges. So we have just under 3,000 students in residential colleges, and there's quite a big footprint of that, but also, I guess, another way to describe it is what are the fingerprints on that as well as the footprint. So what are the things that we do by touching it that make perhaps for a better future. So we're looking at the food that is bought in the colleges. How do we reduce the footprint, but also not just about restricting it on our supply end, how do we help students learn about food so that there's A, less waste, and B, the stuff they're eating has a lower footprint as well. We're the only university in New Zealand that has, on our annual carbon inventory, done an estimate of the emissions due to purchase of food. So it's not including the power for cooking it or the food waste. It's just the footprint of getting that food to the door. And with almost 3,000 students in residence, that actually turned up to be in 2019, our fourth biggest emission factor, a huge footprint. So that raised our awareness of it just by measuring it, which is a great first step. And now we're looking at what can we do about it. So we had some research done by a student in health sciences alongside his supervisors, looking at an inventory of food in New Zealand and working out, so for a head of broccoli, what's the footprint of that? For a kg of pasta, what's the footprint? But New Zealand values. And he did that, but then also took it the next step to look at if people are taking different dietary choices, how different is the footprint? So if you are a typical Kiwi, eat pies now and again, yeah, what is your footprint of the food per day? If you're a vegetarian, a vegan, and there's about 11 different national dietary guidelines. And one of those guidelines was if you had 1 day per week where you had a no meat diet. And the data showed that on average that would give you an 11% reduction. Yeah, across your week, an 11% reduction. So we decided, let's try that in the colleges. So we now have Mindful Monday in any of the colleges. If you turn up on a Monday for your food, there is no meat on the menu. Through the rest of the week, where you would normally and traditionally have had meat, and then veggie on the counter, we now have veggie and meat. And that shift of 1 day plant-based was about 500 tonnes of CO2 emissions less across a year across all of our halls. Yeah, so it's I think from memory it works out about 130 average Kiwi cars off of the road for a year, just by 1 day no plant-based. Yeah, which initially when we tested it out created a little bit of resistance, but it's just normal now. Yeah, and everybody seems quite kitty pie about it all. Yeah. The next step is how do we keep taking that further, and rather than estimating what the dietary choices are, we can actually measure the emissions on the ingredients. So the software system they use, they program their menu, they work out how many portions. The software turns that into a shopping list that goes off to the wholesaler, but also it gives a list of the nutritional value, and one of those nutritional values they've added in a way to measure the emissions. So within the next year, when a student goes up to the servery in their college, they'll be able to see, their veggie lasagna is X number of grams per portion of CO2 equivalent. Yeah, their burgers are this, and it may not be a real critical element in their food choice. For some it will, but for everybody it will have some awareness, and it'll be just one of those, I guess, trickle feed messages to raise awareness of what you eat has an impact on our climate.